Behind us is a tiny house.
Hey everyone, so we're finally up here. Please ignore the pole in the shot, it's what's holding the light up. But I'm here with Audrey, and she's just gonna tell us a little bit about the designing that went into it. Maybe can you give people some helpful tips or anything if they're gonna try and build their own tiny house, things like that. So I'm gonna give the mic over to her.
So I actually spent, do I hold this?
Yeah, you can hold it.
Okay. I actually spent about a year designing and acquiring materials. That's really the only way I was able to do it so inexpensively. So I looked online, and at the time there weren't a whole lot of tiny houses actually, and so I was just kind of looking at different models and saying, oh, I like this part of that one, I like this part of that one, and I kind of combined different ideas that I found. I guess it wouldn't be ideas if I found the whatever. Anyway,
Who cares?
So for example, one thing that was really important to me, especially the fact that it's a tiny house, is that the kitchen was very far away from the bathroom. And at the time, a lot of tiny houses, they were like right next to each other. And I really didn't like that. I mean, it might be fine in a traditional size house, but in a tiny house, it'll literally be 2 feet away. And I just wasn't okay with that. So for example, in my tiny house, my kitchen is literally on one end of the house and the bathroom is on the other end. So, yeah.
So when it comes to things like doors, windows, and home furnishings, obviously because the scale of the building is smaller, did that pose any problems in terms of acquiring them? Because I would think most people would be like, oh my gosh, I can't go to Home Depot or Lowe's or the local hardware store and just buy something. They might think they have to go to get it custom made. Do you have any tips for that, like ways to work around that to make it budget friendly?
Absolutely. So, like I said earlier, all of my windows were used, even though they had never been installed in a home. And so most of the windows, actually I should say almost half of the windows, are actually sample size windows. So let's say you're buying a custom windows, they have different options. So would you like a casement window, a slider, a double hung? And so several of my windows are actually the sample size. So it came with a little handle, so it made it very convenient when I bought it. And so it's the perfect size. Another issue with doors is because the walls aren't 8 feet tall, like a traditional home, they're a couple inches shorter. It made finding a door a little bit more difficult. So if you want to go cost effective, check Craigslist, check the Restore store, I guess yard sales you could look for, but it really does require custom size windows. You can't just buy them off the shelf necessarily.
That makes sense. When it comes to appliances, obviously, as we could see, your little combo oven stovetop doohickey is pretty tiny. Is that something that's designed for, say, like campers? Obviously, it can't be a sample because that would be completely non-functional. It would just sit there. I'm assuming that was smaller, and then the sink is smaller. I'm assuming that certain things are actually not as hard to source out as possible. What about things like, say, a washer and a dryer? Or do you just not have something like that because of the space requirements?
Sure. So the stove oven combo that I have actually came from a camper. And so that is, probably 3/4 scale. As far as the sink, it's a large bar size sink. So again, 3/4 scale. The fridge that I have, it's not quite a dorm size fridge, and it's definitely not an apartment size fridge. It's kind of in between, which is really perfect for me since I'll just be living here by myself. As far as washer dryer combo, I have the luxury of not having to have one inside of my tiny house, but I have used washer dryer combos where it's, one unit has a washer and the dryer. I've used multiple ones when I travel abroad, and I do not like them at all. I honestly would rather go to a laundromat. They take a long time. They don't hold a lot. They wash the clothes just fine, but it's not ideal.
I guess even with the rise of app-based drop your dirty laundry off at the front door and we'll ship it back to you the next day clean, you almost could pretty much just eliminate something like that by just literally either doing that or, like you said, going to the laundromat and doing it like that.
We got a little washboard.
Oh gosh, if she does that, we're going to have an episode titled How to Do Your Laundry Old-Fashioned Style featuring my sister.
But thankfully for me, I have access to a full-size washer dryer, so that is not something that I have to worry about.
Any final thoughts, words, comments you want to give to people regarding this? Kind of like if they see this and go, oh my gosh, I want to build one. Do you have any like tips or thoughts to give them? Because you, along with my dad, built this. Do you have any, and I'm not kidding when I say she built this, I come down one time to visit and here she is wielding a nail gun and a chop saw, and I'm like, what? Wow, you know how to use power tools. Good for you. I mean, obviously some people would just be like, oh, I'm just going to go online, go to 1-800-tinyhomes.com and have one built. But if they really wanted to build their own, do you have any like good, helpful tips without being like too specific, just like general tips like do this, don't do this, things like that?
Sure. So, I mean, I had absolutely no construction experience going into it. I mean, painting is just about as handy as I got. And so if you don't have a whole lot of construction experience, you absolutely need someone who knows what they're doing. Because not only is it traditional construction, it's tiny, but it has every aspect that a traditional house has. And so it's not really like building a playhouse or a shed. And so I'm sure people could do it a whole lot faster than what I did. But it takes a lot of time. And I absolutely love the idea of tiny houses, and I don't want to discourage anyone at all, but it's not for everyone. It's really not. I can't imagine like a family living in a tiny house. I mean, I'm sure it can be done, but it's for a very specific little niche.
And that is true, because pretty much you have to almost go like Japanese minimalist. And I'm not just saying that. It's like everything's smaller. Your space to store things is smaller. And if you're like me with
Except for my tiny house, because I have a walk-through closet.
Well, whatever. But if you're like me, who has 2 CNC machines, a lathe, setting up to get a welder, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, a tiny house would not be good for you. If you're somebody like my sister who's used to traveling, living out of a suitcase, living with a lot less than you normally need. And not to say that you couldn't do it. If you had more stuff, you could always store it in a locker. But the idea is when you're in a tiny house, things are obviously tinier. So that's something that you got to keep in mind. So just for you as the audience, it's something to definitely maybe map out in your house. Like, okay, how much space do I really need? How much stuff do I really use? Maybe even set up like a suitcase that you live out of and see if it really works for you. Because for those who it really could work for, it's awesome. Personally, I couldn't see myself living in a tiny house, but I love the concept of it. And I think it is something totally awesome. But like Audrey said, got to make sure it's right for you before you go diving headfirst and go, oh, it's such a great idea. And it turns into like the overpriced guest house that like lives in the backyard that everybody goes, oh, you get that like tiny house thing in the backyard? Can I like spend the night in it? But like nobody ever practically uses it,
right,
obviously.
Along those lines, when you do purchase these pre-built or even as a kit, they're really not that cost effective. I just don't see how it would be a good decision from a cost perspective.
Well, maybe say you're like some business tycoon who travels all over the world and like never is in town to build anything. But that is true. And also when you make it yourself, you can design in your own storage, or in your case, you separated the kitchen, which is beyond the camera, from the bathroom, which is technically behind us, below us, where the window is. You know, things like that Audrey thought through and figured out, no, I don't want this, and yes, I want this. It's things like that when you custom build it that you have the control over. And also you have the bragging rights. I built this myself because I'm so awesome. So, you know, just you know, figure out if it's for you and go from there. Do you have any like final thoughts to give people, or should we probably conclude this and get down here without killing ourselves?
I think that's about it, unless you have any other questions.
I can't think of anything. So now let's try and get ourselves down from here without dying. And I'll see you guys next time on the next episode of Make It with Calvin. If you guys do have any questions about the tiny house, I will try and channel them to my sister and see if she can't help you guys. Also, if there's any like good tiny house links that you used to get ideas from, I'll try and see if I can't get those in the description. Hope you guys found this interesting, and I'll see you next time. Now let's get down.